back to On the Soul's Terms podcast, and I'm really stoked and delighted to welcome a dear friend of mine, a new friend, but feels like a very old friend, perhaps someone I've known for, I don't know, lifetimes, even though we've only known each other for a few months, really. Someone I was on pilgrimage with in Greece, an amazing storyteller, somebody that goes deep into the dreams. She's a dream witch. An exceptional human, someone I'm really delighted to know. Her name is Libby Rose Waite. Libby, welcome to the show.
Hi, Chris. Thank you. And thank you for that beautiful words of introduction. I feel myself fizzing a little bit as I receive them.
Yeah. Well, I'm really stoked to have you on the show. And, you know, normally I do this fairy tale episode for each of the houses. And I was looking at the fairy tales and I was thinking about it. And I definitely do like the theme of the Frog King and this golden ball falling down the well, the princesses at the edge of the dark forest. And I was sitting with just that image. I just wanted to hang out with that image. And then I thought, actually, there's a deeper root myth to that story that I would like to get further into, the princess at the edge of the dark forest and the well and the loss and the retrieval of the golden ball. So I thought of you, and we'd just been in touch recently, and I thought, you know, let's get Libby on here and delve into Persephone's tale. So yes, but before we do that, maybe you can tell me or tell us and the audience a little bit about you and your passions and what you love and what your work is in the world, and maybe just introduce yourself.
Yeah, the simplest thing to say is that I'm a psychotherapist and a dream witch. I work intimately with dreams and kind of understand dreams to be a support for me. That's what they're there to do, to support us, to support our soul's journey. And reawakening people to the dream realm is why I'm here. I'm also, my life is kind of constellated recently around reclaiming this part of me that used to be an actress, that used to be a performer, as a Leo rising, but bringing that back around now with the lens of myth, and particularly the time that we shared in Greece a couple of months ago. Really set that alight in a huge way. And the stories have just been coming to me, and I call it somatic storytelling, kind of offering the myths in an embodied way. I'm also an embodiment guide. And yeah, letting the stories reroute into our own bodies so that the parts of them that, you know, the parts of them that can meet the fertile parts of us, these are the ways that I kind of love to let the stories come back to life. And the story that we're going to explore today is a story that got rooted into me at the end of last summer as we were preparing for the descent into the dark. And I was in Granada, and our friend, Maricel, did a womb practice where she invoked Persephone. And in that practice, she planted Persephone in my being, in this fertile part of my being. And I began telling Persephone's story last equinox. And yeah, we then together went to Elefsina, to Ulysses, Pluto's cave, back in June. And the version of the story that I'm here to invite to continue to spiral this space between us. The version of the story came to me as we were driving away from Ulysses, and we were kind of surrounded by meadows of flowers, and I had the image of Persephone then coming to pick the flowers there, and that's what kind of sparked this version of the story. But I love how the stories continue to be rewoven, and I know that I imagine the story will shift as we invite it to come back again now. I will say that I am also in Greece right now. I've returned for pilgrimage part 2, and a part of that was me wanting to come and be in better relationship with Demeter, who was Persephone's mother. and I've just been on Naxos, where there is an incredible sanctuary to Demeter, with a temple in the middle of kind of vast rolling hills, and it's the end of the summer here, and so it was full of golden wheat. And I'll be going back to Ulysses tomorrow to really, really ask for Demeter's support, as well as to make offerings again to Persephone and Hades, as we all in the Northern Hemisphere prepare for the next round of descent, the next equinox.
Yeah, wow. And so it's so good, this timing of you being there, currently in Athens. And you've just been in Naxos, so there's a whole other story of love and loss that goes on in the realm of Naxos with Ariadne. But we won't open the door. We'll just keep it slightly ajar to Ariadne's story, perhaps, which has a few echoes of this story. But you've just literally got off the boat from Naxos last night, coming into Athens, and what better time to catch you than between Naxos and Eleusis. And of course, this is the place where the mysteries were held, and the descent into the underworld was celebrated for 1,000 or so or more years, as a big part of ancient Greek culture. So beautiful for you to be touching into the land, and maybe also connecting us back to an ancient way that is always with us. And I think that's the real treat and pleasure that the audience will enjoy today as well, which is that your way of being with myths it reminds us that it's an oral tradition, and there were myths written down, yes, and those are the myths that we have now, yes, but also as an oral tradition, and even a musical tradition. These myths were sung as hymns. In fact, this is a hymn that we're getting into today, and each person that's bringing the hymn is also bringing their own soul and take on the story and their own subjective experience of the story. And that's what I really enjoy. I mean, I'm also doing this in a way, but I love that the way that you elaborate and allow yourself to be taken, and to take it and be taken, is a really beautiful way of you, and doing that Leo rising and bringing back that theater of the soul, that theater that goes deep into yourself. And so I just want to start by offering my appreciation to you for that, for bringing these myths to life. I think that's really the movement that I certainly feel I'm a part of as well. And so it's been beautiful to meet you as a kin figure in my life, and so looking forward to being in story together today.
Yeah, and actually, the version that came through after we drove away from Ulysses back in June, you had said something a week or so before about when Persephone picks the flower, and that was the way into this version of the story. And so also honoring like the way that you are with myths that can give such clarity and precision, and it feels like a holding ground, to then be able to swim around and get lost around, but to still have these and this, they're kind of more, it feels to me like something that I can reach out and cling on to, the way that the level of the depth of knowledge that you have. And I guess that's what I invite your listeners to do as well, to swim around and to see what are the parts of the story that they find they can cling on to, that kind of go right into them. And so it's not about needing to listen or know, but rather just hear within you what are the parts of the story that ring true in your soul. And that's what I understand myth to be, how it's operating.
Beautiful. Thank you. That's a great invitation for the listeners. So yes, listeners, this will be a time to sort of like maybe just relax the analytical understanding mind, and really bring forth the part of mind that like the child that listens to the parent or the people in the village tell you a story, just employing the wonder and the wandering wonder of the mind and the soul to just be taken along. And as Libby's saying there, see what is brought forward, see what wants to come along with the story, and really be in a deep trust of that. And yeah, as we go, we're still in that realm of the fifth house, so we'll be having a few pauses here and there, and Libby and I will just be chatting about what's coming up and what is cooking for us, and that may or may not be cooking for you. But that's this is just to give a few prompts and a little bit of exploration, which can often have a bit of a synchronous moment with the listener that is out there. So yes, where shall we begin, Libby? Who's around? What paint the scene for us? Where are we?
Well, I said I'd come into better relationship with Demeter, and she feels huge in my awareness right now. And when I picture Demeter, the statues of her, I have a sense of her both holding, like she often has an arm kind of gathered in towards her, as well as the other arm is almost like she's making an offering. So I'm doing it with my body, this kind of gathering in and nurturing and support, as well as something that's more fluid and gentle and with her other hand. And so we'll start with Demeter, which is, like you said, this whole story is a hymn to Demeter. And that's the part that we begin with our feet rooted on her fertile ground. And the ground of Demeter is the most fertile of all the grounds, of all the lands, because she is the goddess of the harvest. She's an Olympian, which is to say that she is a sibling of Zeus, of Hera, Poseidon, of Hades, of Hecate, of Hestia. But unlike her sister Hestia, goddess of the hearth, who is a kind of untouchable goddess in that she is chaste and she is self-contained and she is very un-fifth house, Demeter is somewhere more in between. She doesn't marry, so her sister Hera becomes the wife of Zeus. They have the kind of sacred marriage, but Demeter doesn't marry. But she is still contained and she remains single, apart from a few indiscretions, a couple of indiscretions with her brother Zeus, who is not only the king of the gods, but the king of indiscretions. But yeah, she's the goddess of the harvest, and it's her who calls the plants to root deep down into the earth, where they can find all the nourishment of the soil, and they drink up from that shimmering soil, shimmering soul, which is what nourishes us all. And the plants drink up from that place, and Demeter calls them to push up through the lands and to reach up towards Helios, the sun god. And it is her who allows the plants to flourish and to blossom and to fruit. And it's also her who then calls on the energy of the harvest to reap the rewards of all of that blossoming. And it's Demeter who gives the weight to the fruits so that they may hang heavy and ripe from the trees. And it's Demeter who sprinkles the sparkling pollen on the flowers for all the bees to drink in and to produce the nectar that will feed the gods, which will create the ambrosia to feed the gods. But it's this indiscretion, this single indiscretion with her brother Zeus, where the two of them shapeshift into serpents and entwine with a sudden burst of longing that is quite alien to Demeter, and which, from that coiling entwinement with Zeus, a different seed is planted in Demeter. And it's this seed which blossoms within her belly that Demeter loves above all of the fruits that she bears and above all of the riches that she brings into the world. None is so sacred to her and so beloved by her than her own daughter Persephone, which is the being, the goddess that is birthed from this single indiscretion with Zeus. And when Demeter becomes a mother, she becomes complete. This is all that she could ever want from her life up on Mount Olympus. She is so delighted to become mother. And even though she's been mother to the land in so many ways, for her, coming into relationship with this single other being, Persephone, is just, is so delightful. And she takes great care of Persephone. Zeus, as we know, has fathered many children, many children.
Quite a few. Yeah.
Quite a few. So he's a little busy. He's not so involved in the upbringing of Persephone. And Demeter's essentially a single mother, raising her daughter Persephone and trying to make her be a princess that is becoming of, the Olympian ways. And Persephone is quite a shy child. Because her mother never quite lets her kind of step out by herself. Anytime Persephone starts to, excitedly run across pebbles in a river, it's Persephone, come back, Persephone, be careful. Don't go too far. Come back, Persephone. Or anytime Persephone wants to climb a tree, no, Persephone, that's too high. Come back down, darling, come back down. And so Persephone can never quite judge, like, oh, is this okay? Is this safe? Should I be careful? Do I need to be careful? And she kind of, when she feels that instinct to want to move forward, to kind of run into the wilderness, it's, oh, no, I should come back to my mother where I'm safe. And Persephone grows and she becomes a young woman. And one of the kind of defining aspects of life as Demeter's daughter is that life is an endless feast. Every night there is a great banquet laid with all of the fruits of Demeter's labor, all of the offerings from the harvest, and all the farmers from all the lands come and, give their most succulent crops to Demeter so that she can lay this banquet table night after night. And all the gods come and delight in these banquets. And fun fact, friends, the gods love to eat. But they don't need to eat to survive. They're immortal. They don't need to sustain themselves with food, but they love to gorge on food all the same. So they all kind of love to come and, just eat the most incredible meals night after night. And at these banquets, Persephone often asks Mother, could I sing for the gods tonight when they come? Persephone, no. Apollo's bringing his lyre. Apollo's coming. No, Apollo will be playing tonight. And then a few nights later, Mother, I wrote a poem. Can I share it at dinner tonight? Persephone, no, the Muses are coming to eat tonight. Calliope will be reading her poetry tonight. Persephone kind of tucks her poem back in her pocket, thinks, okay. And Persephone says, can I dance tonight? Can I dance for the guests tonight, Mother? And Demeter says, Persephone, no. Such behavior is ill-befitting for a princess of Olympus. You will sit by my side and you will smile at our guests and you will show them how restrained we can be, even amongst all of these riches. And so Persephone sits night after night, drumming her fingers on the table as the gods speak over her head. But there's one god who will sometimes come and seek Persephone out in the corners of these feasts, and that is the god Hermes, the messenger god, the trickster god. And he likes to come and tease Persephone. Oh, Persephone, did you help your mother pick these tomatoes? Persephone, did you help your mother crush these grapes for dinner tonight? And Persephone rolls her eyes at Hermes and tells him teasingly to go away and leave her alone, though she enjoys the attention. She enjoys that at least Hermes will come and talk to her. But as she gets older, Demeter's kind of all-encompassing love for Persephone begins to feel more and more suffocating to Persephone. And she finds herself having to hold her breath when her mother's talking, and she finds herself needing to take any moment she kind of can to step away and outside of that gaze so that she can just have a moment by herself. And this is hard to do. Demeter is always hyper aware of where Persephone is going to be, and she always wants to have her daughter on display so that Persephone is seen to be a part of Demeter, but never fully seen, never allowed to fully express. And so Persephone has to find ways to go and express. And she does manage in stolen moments when Demeter is receiving a sack of wheat from Orestes, the farmer from Thrace. When Persephone finds these moments to slip away, and she finds a tiny crack in the earth, a tiny stone crack in the earth, where she can slip like a shadow unseen inside of the crack. And there she can finally exhale into the cool air inside the stone, inside the earth. And when she's there, she feels how freeing it is to be unseen, to be invisible, to no longer have to be the good princess of Olympus, to no longer have to be the doting daughter of Demeter, but to just be, to be anonymous inside this opening in the earth. And Persephone gets more and more comfortable with this sense of anonymity. And she begins to let herself even shrug down the silken robes that she wears and the bangles that she's adorned with. She kind of lets herself shake these off. And she lets her tunic drop over her shoulder so that she bears her breasts inside this opening in the earth where nobody will see her. And she even allows herself to pull up her skirts so that her bare skin is resting on the stone as she sits there. And it is such a pleasure to just be bare, to be bare against the stone, against the earth, and to be nobody. But she knows she can never stay being nobody for long. And so always before she would wish to leave, she pulls her tunic back up and shakes her skirt back down and pulls her bangles back on, and she slips out of the opening in the earth, making sure that no one has seen where she's been. And she goes back to her mother's table. Persephone, where have you been? Oh, I was gathering some apples to bring to dinner tonight. Oh, very well. Place them on the table, my love. Place them on the table. The guests will be here soon. But what Persephone did not perceive was that there was another pair of eyes gazing upon her as she sat naked in that cave. A pair of eyes that were looking up towards her from deep down in the earth. And these pair of eyes pierced through Persephone's bareless, nameless anonymity, and they saw something even more clarified within her that was not yet discernible to Persephone, but which these eyes saw as they beheld her there, naked in the opening in the earth. Yeah, and I'm pausing. I'm pausing there as those eyes continue to reach for Persephone.
It's such a mesmerizing story. And I think what I'm enjoying so far, and where I'm enjoying especially in our exploration of the fifth, is that just as you were telling the story, it occurred to me, Persephone doesn't have her own story. Her story is embedded in the hymn to Demeter, and all of the grief and loss, and we follow Demeter and we stay with Demeter, and she's there. She's a big component of it, but we don't really see much of her And I'm feeling that it's very honoring of Persephone to be elaborating and finding our way into her perspective. So I just want to start with that, like how much I'm enjoying almost like getting to know her. Mm-hmm. And recognizing that her story is embedded in her mother's story so deeply that I hadn't really, acknowledged that before this moment, maybe, of just how embedded she is, even as a goddess inside of that story.
Which is to say, from the written myths or from the the sacred texts, she's buried in the fourth house. She's not allowed to kind of step out of the fourth house and into the fifth.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like Demeter's in the fifth, and that she, like, her individuation journey, at least as she perceives it, as she lives it, is that having a child is enough. She doesn't need to then also seek a romantic partner. Like, having that child is enough. But that then suffocates Persephone from being able to step out of the fourth, where she's then kind of held with her mother. And it's interesting that that stepping out into fifth is exiled from the stories, even though she then, yes, we know what she becomes, and I won't say in case in case
suspense. In
case listeners don't know, but she in the text moves from fourth to kind of eighth. She leaps. But
true.
if we stay closer to her story, then we get to invite her, and I guess that's what we're doing, is we're inviting Persephone to step from fourth into fifth in this retelling.
Yeah. And something about, I'm really glad that we're here in this story, because something that I hadn't talked about in my fifth house episode, my solo one or the one with Vive, is there's a tensional point between the 5th and 11th that's happening here as well. And the 11th is like the expectations of the society, let's just say, or society itself. And what's being really beautifully elaborated in this story is her tension point with society. So it's not just that her mum is there and she's kind of she's a little bit locked in the 4th. But the 11th is very present as well, because there's certain ways she has to be, and she has to show up as that princess, and she has to be very proper. And whenever she wants to do something kind of exciting, like play some music or read her poetry or dance, all these fifth house things, she's told, no, not for you. This is not for you. You're the princess. And her struggle with being an upper world goddess. And I'm loving the elaboration on how she would be as daughter of Demeter, how she really is a princess. She is, of course, Demeter's name is De, which is earth, and Meta, which is mother. So she is the earth mother, and she's the daughter of the earth mother, and there's no father around. And so this is her whole identity is linked and bonded to mother, but also bonded to her position in society. So it's kind of like she's going 4th, 11th in a way of like, here's what's expected of you, and here's you as daughter. And I find it really curious that in your telling here, she's slipping through a crack and finding somewhere that she can be. And so we can hear almost the beginnings of where she feels comfortable is in the cave. Where she feels comfortable is where she is not seen. But there is a desire to be seen too, which I've talked about it in the podcast about a fifth house theme, because this is a place it's a night house actually, but in that night house, there's your talents are kind of like down there. You know something about a gift that you might have or something you might want to bring forward. The tension of seen and unseen I've always felt in Persephone and Hades' story. Hades eventually has the helmet of invisibility, so the ability to take that off and be seen and put it on and be unseen. So yes, just feeling into those. And even the way that she was conceived, which is a fifth house idea, is as these two snakes. So there's something of a nod to her underworld presence right from the beginning, right from her conception, and the entangling of two snakes, and that being also an image of the caduceus and also an Asclepian image of healing and renewal, death, birth, renewal. It's all already seeded, as these stories often are, in the beginnings.
Yeah, I mean, as you're speaking, one I have to name that, like, I can see the Acropolis out the window.
Amazing. Yeah.
So Athena is here, and a bell is tolling as I say this. At the window.
Okay. Hi, Athena. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Athena. Yeah, welcome to the chat. I mean, I am a great devotee of Athena, and
you are.
Welcome her particular flavor of love and support. And it's a delight to be in Athens, which is seated on that particular love and support of Athena. But as you're kind of talking, there's an agonizing kind of responsibility for Persephone in that she is not confined in the same way that Athena is. So if we say, these two are sisters, and Persephone is raised by her mother, and Athena is raised by her father, Zeus. But she's also enclosed in, I don't know what house she's enclosed in, and that she is a untouchable goddess. I remember in the first episode you talked about with the fifth house of the goddesses that can or cannot be touched by Athena. By Aphrodite.
By Aphrodite, yeah.
And
Athena's being one of them.
Yeah. Athena's like, I'm not being touched by Aphrodite. Nope. And so she gets to be put in a box, and it's like, okay, Athena, stay in your lane. And there's a clearer path if it's like, no, I'm this virgin goddess, and my love is for the heroes, and my love is for my city, and my love is for my people. But Persephone's is a much unclearer path in that she isn't bound by those same kind of rules of propriety. She can be touched by Aphrodite, as can her mother. And I'm also very interested in, like, when her mother is touched by Aphrodite, she's rolling around as a snake, doesn't get kind of like, wow, when that moment comes upon you and you're suddenly a serpent, wow, that's some powerful energy that Demeter's withdrawing from elsewise. But yeah, how agonizing for Persephone to be kind of almost expected, maybe, at least in my reimagining, almost expected to behave like Athena, to be a good girl, but she can be touched by Aphrodite. So she then has this kind of conflict of, well, how can I express, how can I find my way when I've got choice? She's got choice, which Athena doesn't have that choice. And yeah, it's a responsibility. It's a responsibility to be able to then find our way with that choice, in terms of pleasure, in terms of romance, in terms of how we allow our creativity to pour forth. It's a responsibility.
Yeah, and you've got my astrological mind imagining, where is Athena? But one place she could be considered to be in a pretty happy place for her is the 11th house, where she's upholding the tenets of society and all the rules, and this is how we are and this is how we're not, and imploring the heroes to keep going and to keep striving. And one place you could be is the 11th, which looks over to the 5th and can look at the 5th and go, no, and often does. I mean, Athena is the one that gets heroes to keep moving when they get into a relationship or where they get into a domestic situation. She's like, don't forget, in one version of Jason and the Argonauts, it's like, don't forget, you got to get the golden fleece. You can't be doing this whole domestic thing here. With Theseus and Ariadne, she's like, off we go. We got more journeying to go. Yes, you dealt with the Minotaur situation. Yes, you got Ariadne's help, but there's more adventure to come. So let's get up at 4 a.m. and head off. She's obviously just not interested in a house that Venus is in its joy. It's like, it's not necessary, this house.
Yeah.
Bigger fish to fry.
Yeah.
yeah, we've got empires to build, that kind of thing. We've got wars to win. We got strategies to take care of. And she is, from birth, she happily chooses chastity, Athena. You get the sense of. She's daddy's little girl. She's Zeus's daughter, born from his head.
Yeah.
And that is her way. And that is not Persephone's way. And as she's being asked to become Athena-like, she is in an extraordinary, it's creating, in a sense, this prison for her where there's a tensional place inside of herself. And so, of course, and she can't do other fifth house things. She cannot perform, she cannot sing, she cannot give her poetry on. There's always someone better than her at that. There's always a muse or Apollo, she's her early works of creativity, fifth house, are being compared to the greats immediately. Why would we want to hear from you? It's a very painful fifth house experience, actually. It's what we do, and maybe in the modern world as well, it's what we do to compare ourselves to people that are great at it before we have had a chance to just trial it out. Just give it some time, play like the lions play, and you'll develop your roar in time.
Yeah, that moved me massively. I don't know why. But yeah, that bit all just came up when I was telling the story now. I've not kind of said all that before, the imaginings of like, no. Apollo's playing tonight. Like Orpheus is Orpheus is supporting Apollo tonight. But yeah, how agonizing to be, learning how to do something and ready to share it, and someone's going, no. It's not.
There's way better people at that than you. That to me is a painful fifth house experience. Like, yeah, we don't really need to see your painting or artwork or hear your voice. There's better singers than you. There's better poets than you. It's like, it's so not the point in the fifth, The point is just the unbridled creativity, which is what I called my fifth house episode.
Yeah.
But she has bridled. Everything is bridled in a way.
Yeah. And it just brings me personally to my kind of experience of allowing myself to be a storyteller, in that I don't know what I'm talking about.
You do, but yes.
I'm very unscholarly in terms of, my knowledge of these stories. I'm very, I don't know how you're supposed to tell a story. I don't know what the rules are for kind of spoken storytelling. And I had to get past that, to be like, but I don't care. I love to tell these stories, and I love to let the stories tell me. And that's been such an experience for me of being like, what do I have permission to say? What do I not have permission to say? What's the wrong or right way to do it? But when I'm like, no, it's what comes through. It's what comes through. How I play the lyre, which means lyrical, and the kind of spoken, like play the music of the story. So yeah, that feels like I recognize that just from what you've invited me on here to do, which is why it also means so much that you've invited me here to do it, because it's me standing in the fifth house going, I'm here.
And we're so glad you're here, Libby. We're so glad you're here. And that's the thing. This is the house where it's like, you know what, drop the rules, drop all of that. Let's just see what you do. Let's just see. And that's why it's a beautiful house. It's like a seeded house for everything else that can come from it in the world of creativity and play. Like in here, this is where Venus is saying, yeah, let's play. And it's interesting because Aphrodite has been around in this story, hasn't she? But she's been in the background of this story. We can hear. She's been doing the Aphrodite and her son Eros have been curiously involved in the story, if not mentioned directly.
Yeah, I love that. I got an image now of all the other gods talking over Persephone's head and Aphrodite at the other end of the table going, wow, Persephone's really growing up to be a beauty, like Aphrodite kind of really looking, and picture her like taking a plum and bringing it to her mouth and maybe kind of offering the plate to Persephone and trying to silently tutelage her in another way that her mother is not equipped to to tutor her in.
Yes.
Love this idea of Aphrodite being like
Very subtle in the background and already picking out, well, who would she be suited to this one? Already kind of like having a look around.
Well, then I'm like, Eros, you know?
Oh, yeah, true. Yeah.
Maybe Aphrodite's like, she'd be a great match for Eros because at this point, Eros hasn't met Psyche in my imagined timeline.
Me neither.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, that would have been. But that's not her Dharma. That's not her soulmate. That's not who she's supposed to be with. Mm. And so I remember that not only is Aphrodite looking at Persephone across the table that evening, but the pair of eyes that beheld her in the cave have also followed her back to Mount Olympus and to the feast. And these eyes from deep down in the earth, these eyes continue to follow Persephone through her days and through her nights. And they just drink more and more and more of her in. And the eyes find that they cannot turn away from her. Persephone remains unaware of these eyes following her. She remains feeling unseen. She doesn't even recognize that Aphrodite also has a close eye on her as well. And she continues to grow weary of the confines of her life. And so these eyes see Persephone sighing heavily at the dinner table. And these eyes see Persephone practicing on her harp in her room, the songs that will never be welcome at her mother's dining table. And the eyes see Persephone restless, tossing and turning in the night. And these eyes see Persephone when one morning she arises and she feels a great desire to head out to the meadows. She can find some time to go and be alone today, but she chooses not to go to the opening in the earth, but instead to go to a field where her favorite flowers are growing. Persephone's favorite flower is the narcissus. And she grows into this meadow, which is pungent with the sweet smell, the sweet spring-like smell of the narcissus. And Persephone delicately, like a princess of Olympus, bends down to pluck a narcissus. But this Olympian princessian plucking is not quite enough to draw it from the earth. And so she wraps her hand around the stem of the narcissus and tries to tug it up. But this is not enough. The narcissus is stubbornly staying rooted in the earth. And so Persephone wraps both of her hands around the narcissus and she digs her heels into the ground and she bends and she squats and she pulls and she squeezes and she tugs at the narcissus until finally the stem comes away from the earth. But beneath it, the roots also begin to sprinkle up out of the earth as the narcissus is plunged out from the ground. And from beneath it, the ground begins to crack and the ground begins to open and it begins to exhale until it is a wide, vast chasm in the ground. The Persephone stands aghast at. When out of this opening in the ground, there arises a giant obsidian chariot drawn by 4 black stallions. And the being who is riding this chariot is magnetic. He has thick, coiling black ringlets tumbling down his head and a wiry beard that streams down over his naked, rippling torso, and his bushy black eyebrows are furrowed in fury. And his eyes, behold Persephone. And this is the god Hades, king of the underworld, the eyes which have been beholding and following Persephone up in the land of the living now come to claim her and force her to descend back down to the world of the dead with him. And he takes his vast arm and he sweeps Persephone up in it, and he throws her over his shoulder, and he plunges back down into the earth, which closes back up over him as if nothing had happened, except for there being a small, round, empty circle where that single Narcissus had once stood. And time rolls on, and the sun god Helios, rolls through the sky, and Demeter, back home, notices Persephone's absence. Persephone, time to dress for dinner. Persephone. Persephone doesn't come. Persephone, the guests will be arriving soon. She doesn't come. Persephone, really now, it's time. We must prepare for the feast. Persephone doesn't come. And Demeter starts to feel a butterfly flapping in her stomach. And she begins to rush around asking the servants, have you seen Persephone? She's not come for dinner. And she rushes to Hermes. Hermes, have you seen Persephone? Have you been talking with her today? I can't find her. And Hermes shrugs. No, I haven't seen her. And Demeter runs. Hestia, dear sister, have you seen Persephone? I can't find her anywhere. She hasn't come for dinner. Have you seen her? I don't know where she is. Hestia says, no, my love, no. No, I'm sorry, I haven't seen Persephone. And that butterfly begins to turn into a frantic, flapping bird. And the panic rises in Demeter. And still Persephone does not come until Demeter, shrieking, throws herself at Zeus's feet. Zeus, our daughter. You can't find her anywhere. Have you seen her? And Zeus's brain starts working overtime. Oh God, Persephone, our daughter Persephone. Yeah, no, sorry, Demeter. I haven't seen dear Persephone for some time. Is she away? Is she on vacation? No, she's not on vacation. She should be here. And yeah, Demeter is beside herself, and she goes god after god, titan after titan, nymph after nymph, asking everyone if anyone has seen Persephone, but no one has seen head nor tail of Persephone, and she cannot be found anywhere. And so Demeter's panic begins to cascade into grief. And as the grief begins to wash through Demeter, the grief of not knowing, the fear of where she may be, of what may be happening to her, this grief begins to creep out of Demeter and into the land where the crops wither and the ground cracks and the fruit drops from the trees where it begins to rot. And the whole world descends into a barren wasteland where nothing will grow, where no flower will blossom, where no seed will sprout. And so there is no food to be harvested for the banquets. And while this is an inconvenience to the gods, to the people, to the humans, it signifies death. And Demeter's grief begins to starve the world. And there is a great sorrow across all the lands as the chasm that opened up in Demeter grows vaster. And she longs for the return of her daughter, the safe return of her daughter. And eventually even Zeus sees that, okay, this has to stop. We can't starve all the humans. Maybe I could do something more to try and find where Persephone may have been. And Zeus is sat with his head in his hands, which is an unfamiliar stance for Zeus. And when his wife, his dear wife, Hera, sees Zeus with his head in his hands, she says, Zeus, what have you done now? And Zeus says, I haven't done anything. Haven't you heard? Demeter's daughter. You mean your daughter? You mean your daughter that you fathered was Persephone? Yes, yes, my daughter Persephone. No one's seen head nor tail of her, and Demeter's grief is starving the people. And Hera says, well, have you asked Hecate? And Zeus says, Hecate? What would she know? She's barely even up here on the land of the living. Hera says, go to her, go to our sister. Trust in her wisdom, go to our sister and see what Hecate has to say. And so Zeus, being grateful for a task so he can make himself look useful, goes and finds Hecate, and he finds her just in a momentary pause where she's up on the land of the living before she's making her potions and her concoctions and her spells, this great goddess of witchcraft and sorcery. And Zeus says, Hecate, before you begin your next incantation, can I ask you, have you seen Persephone anywhere? Demeter's daughter, the young princess. Hecate says, no, I haven't seen your daughter Persephone anywhere, Zeus. But if you want to know where she might be, if she's anywhere in the land of the living, then ask Helios, the sun god. He sees all. He'll know where it is, where she may be. And Zeus cracks his fingers and says, yes, great idea. I'll ask Helios. Helios is a Titan, so Zeus had kind of forgot that he's an important being, him being a non-Olympian. So he forgot to value his opinion. And so Zeus goes bounding up to Helios and says, Helios, mighty sun, all-seeing eye. I wonder, my friend, my old friend, did you see what happened to Persephone? And Helios puffs up his golden chest. He's been waiting for this moment. He's been waiting for someone to come and ask what may have happened. And he says, so you've remembered, have you? You've remembered that I see all. Yes, you would do well to remember this in the future, Zeus. I have a great power, even if you don't always perceive it. And yes, it so happens that I do know what happened to Persephone. She went to pick a flower, and when she pulled the flower, the earth opened up, and Hades rose up from the ground, and he took her, and they disappeared back into the earth. And Zeus thinks, shit. Shit. Oh, if there's anyone or anywhere that Zeus cannot go to retrieve Persephone, it's down in the underworld. And Zeus knows that him asking anything of Hades, his brother, it's not only likely to result in a quarrel, but it could result in a great war. And so Zeus thinks, oh gosh, how could I get her back? Of course, I'll ask Hermes to go. Hermes and Hades are old buddies, drinking buddies of old. Hermes will know what to do. And then he thinks, oh God, but what is Demeter going to do when I tell her who has a daughter? And Zeus decides it's best if Hermes delivers that news as well. And so Hermes is the one that goes to Demeter and says, Zeus has found Persephone. But you might want to sit down before I tell you where she is. Helios says that he saw Hades take her, and Demeter lets out a huge wail. Oh, my darling, fell down with that beast. Oh, my innocent little girl. The underworld is no place for Persephone. Oh, how she must be suffering. Oh, Hermes, I can barely stand it. What will Hades be doing to my innocent, my naive girl down in the underworld? And this is where we invite our imagination to step back in. As we imagine, what is Persephone doing down in the underworld? And so, yeah, listeners, I invite you to, feel into that. And Zeus is the sky god, the god of air. Poseidon, his brother, is the sea god, the god of water. And Hades, their brother, Hades is god of the underworld, which is to say the god of earth, which is to say the god of body and the somatic unconscious. And so if you want to reach your imagination down into what it may be that Persephone is doing deep down in the darker recesses of body, then you need to turn inwards and to drop into your body, which is where the underworld resides. And you might do that by bringing a hand to your skin and just reaching your awareness through the layers of tissue and cells and muscles, all the way to the layer of bone and bone marrow, this field of deeper knowing, which is where we go and retrieve Persephone's part of the story. And on arrival in the underworld, Persephone was bewildered. She was taken immediately to her bedchambers and left there alone. And she was terrified. She was terrified. She didn't know what had compelled her to pull on that Narcissus so hard, so forcefully, that it had forced the land to open up beneath her. And she did not know what Hades wanted with her, but her mother had told her many tales about Hades and his monstrous ways, his devouring ways, and Persephone was scared. And that first night, as she lay in her bedchamber, deep down in the recesses of body, of earth, of underworld, she lay frozen in her bed. She lay frozen, knowing that any moment, surely in this next moment, she would hear the rapping on the door, and Hades would push open the door in his almighty form and come to devour her as he had devoured so many souls. And that night, Persephone did not get a wink of sleep. And in the morning, she was summoned. She was summoned to come before Hades in his great hall. His great hall, and Persephone was marched into the hall. And she was stunned by what she saw, the intricate carvings on every inch of the earthen walls of Hades' palace, each telling a different story, a different retelling of a different soul who would come to now reside down in the underworld. And she was shocked by the level of detail and precision and beauty that covered Hades' halls. And there he was, sat in the center of it all upon his vast throne. And about him, many souls were bringing plates of food, dishes of food, but this was a banquet like none other than Persephone had ever seen. There was no golden fruit. There was no succulent meats. There was no ambrosia laid on the table, because the food of the underworld is a different cuisine entirely. And to Persephone's eyes, the food looked dry and dusty and parched. And she felt herself recoiling from this food and knew that she would never be able to bring it to her mouth to taste that barren food of the underworld. But she sat at Hades' table and she looked around her and she saw that all of the souls were looking towards her. Many of the souls in the underworld were looking at her and wondering, who is she? Who is she? And it was a new feeling for Persephone. And she looked at Hades, but Hades with the one pair of eyes that never turned towards Persephone. And she kept staring at him, wondering, what do you want of me? why am I here? Why won't you speak to me and tell me why you have brought me down here? But she kept the words within her own mind. And anytime she turned away to look at the other souls who were gathered at Hades' table, she did feel a flicker of recognition, of a sense of eyes piercing into her. And when she felt that flicker of recognition, she felt both held, and she also felt shame as she wondered where else these eyes may have perceived her before. But anytime she looked back to Hades, he'd be looking off somewhere else. He'd be barking out orders. He'd be barking out his instructions for the underworld to someone else. And then Persephone would be taken back to her room, where she would wonder what on earth it was all about and what on earth she was doing here, until night came again, the endless night of the underworld, and Persephone would climb into her bed, and the fear would come upon her again as she waited for the knock that night after night never came. And Persephone began to grow restless, as she had become restless in the upper world. There was no task for her here. What was she to do? She was as useless down in the underworld as she had been up in the upper world, the land of the living. And so Persephone decided, okay, well, what else is there here? Persephone would wander through the halls of Hades, its long, dreamlike corridors, leading off into umpteen rooms. And she wandered into one of these rooms one day and saw a huge dog with 3 heads. And when this dog saw Persephone, it turned to her and its 3 tongues lolled out, and Cerberus began panting with delight when he saw Persephone. And she said, "Are you a good boy? Are you a good boy?" And Persephone chased after Cerberus as he ran out of the room and down the corridor, and Cerberus ran out of the halls of Hades and out into the outside part of the underworld. And Persephone chased him, and Persephone played with him. And so it was that Cerberus, for the first time, learned to play catch. He had to have many sticks on the go in order to satiate each of the 3 heads that would have to catch one of these sticks in unison. And so Persephone made a friend in Cerberus. And one day she was out playing with Cerberus, and he led her further away. He kept running off, and she would run after Cerberus. And so Cerberus brought Persephone to the fields of asphodel, the fields of ghost-like flowers, which, have a particular current for the realm of the underworld. And Persephone loved to go and be in the fields of asphodel, and it reminded her of the meadows that she liked to slip away to up in the land of the living. And Persephone thought, why have I never seen a flower in the halls of Hades? And so Persephone began to gather the flowers from the fields of asphodel, and she would make great bouquets of them, and she would carry them into Hades' halls, and she would place them at the bottom of the steps. She would place them in the center of the tables, and she would place them by the windows. And she began to decorate the underworld with these flowers. And one day when she was coming back from having gathered flowers, she saw Sisyphus. Pushing his eternal boulder up the hill and having it slide down again, the great punishment by Zeus of Sisyphus. And as he pushed the boulder, there would be many, many stones that would fall down around it. And Persephone began to gather these stones. And she also would carry them into the underworld, and she would make little patterns with them. She would make little designs with them. And she made offerings with the stones next to the flowers that she had laid. And one day when she was out gathering stones from the rubble of the boulder, she saw Charon, the ferryman of the underworld, the ferryman who carried the souls from one end of the river Styx, all the souls who had been given the proper funeral rites and thus given a coin with which to pay Charon. All of these souls he would allow into his boat, and he would carry them down the river Styx to the halls of Hades. leaving all of the souls on the other side of the banks of the river Styx, the other souls who did not have payment for Charon. Persephone said, "Stick out your tongue, Charon." And he did. And there was a golden coin on his tongue from the latest soul that he had brought. And she said, "Why don't you keep your coins here at the doors to the halls of Hades, so that everyone who enters knows that this is also a palace of riches, and so that every soul who enters can see the payment that must be made when we descend, when the mortals come to abide here in the underworld." And so coin by coin, Charon and Persephone begin making a glittering entranceway out of all of these coins of the souls of the living. And so it was that Persephone began to renegotiate the instructions for the underworld in her own way. And she began to decorate and make offering and make ritual a part of the way of life down in the underworld. And she found great pleasure in getting to curate the land of the dead in this way. And so she found a way. She found a way to make herself useful and to play down here in the underworld. But still, night after night, she would slip back into the expectant, waiting for that knock on the door. But with time, the terror that she had initially felt, the terror began to transmute into something else. Persephone didn't quite know what that something else was, but she felt it. She felt it deep in her womb, this place where she would listen and wait for the knock of Hades. And she found that she could listen so intently from this place in her body. She found that she could hear more, she could perceive more, she could long more from this part of her body than from anywhere else. And so she was listening from this place one night when finally a knock came at the door. And Persephone's longing melted, and it crescendoed, and it shimmered. And she went to the door, and she took her hand to the handle, and she felt a smile at the edges of her lips as she opened the door. And there on the other side stood Hermes. "Hermes, what are you doing here? Why are you at my bedchamber?" He said, "Persephone, I've come to rescue you. Daddy dearest has finally got his act together. He's found where you are, and he's sent me down to bring you back to Mummy and to all of us Olympians who miss you so much, Persephone. Come on, it's time to go. Have you got any belongings down here? I can't imagine what you'd want to take with you. Let's go. But we should go. We should tell Hades what's happening first. I don't want to piss Hades off. So we'll stop by Hades, tell him that we're going back up, that thank you. She's had a great stay. She's loved her vacation, but we're going back up." And Persephone, she doesn't know what to do. She doesn't know how to tell Hermes. She doesn't know what to say. So she goes with Hermes, and Hermes marches Persephone right up to Hades and says, "Well, my friend, the game is up. The game is up. You've great game of hide and seek. You know I love a game, but yeah, her mum's not happy. We need to take her back. Demeter is less than pleased with you, my friend." And Hades sits in his throne, and he stands up and he reaches into his pocket from where he pulls a pomegranate. And he doesn't say anything. And Persephone is looking at him desperately, looking at him like, "Are you going to say something? Are you going to say something?" And he doesn't. But he takes the pomegranate and he holds it in his huge hands, and he sticks his thumb inside the pomegranate, and he wraps his fingers around the other side, and he pulls the pomegranate into, so that he holds one half in each of his hands. And he takes one of his massive fingers and he digs out a single pomegranate seed, and he puts it to his mouth. And Hermes sighs, okay, cut the theatrics, Hades, cut the theatrics. There's plenty of pomegranates up waiting for Persephone back home. Come on, my friend. We need to get going. And as Hermes is saying this, Hades hands Persephone a single pomegranate. And he, for the first time, looks directly at her. And she looks back at him, and she looks at the seed, and she brings it to her lips, and she eats the pomegranate. And Hermes says, okay, I'm sure you're hungry. I'm sure you haven't been able to eat much down here, but the pomegranate's not going to satiate you. Let's go back. Demeter will have a feast ready. Let's go back. And she looks at Hades, but he's already looking away. He's already turned away, and he's turned back to, one of his servants, and he's busied himself. And Persephone thinks, fuck you. I'll go with Hermes then. And so she lets herself go back up, and she lets herself be carried back up, and she reascends to the upper world. And when she arises, what she sees breaks her heart. And I'm pausing here on Persephone's ascent. And just sticking my head out of the underworld and wait, where are we? What are we doing here? What's this podcast about? Yeah.
Well, I'm so intrigued, though. What does she see up here? I am taking into my heart the idea of Persephone bringing beauty to the underworld, decorating, bringing ritual, flowers, stones from Sisyphus's boulder, decorating the entrance with coins. And what a gift that is to have her down there decorating for us. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And again, like that part hasn't been in a retelling, one of my retellings before, but as you say that, I'm like, but where would she have learnt that? She would have learnt that from her mother.
Yeah.
She'd have learnt from her mother how to, make good with, decorating the banquet table and, making a palace, making something that's kind of, abundant. And so for me, it's her creating ritual. It's her honoring and making offerings. And she's learned that from the way her mother raised her. But she was never allowed to do that herself. Either Demeter would have been doing it, or maybe there's servants that would have been doing all that. But down in the underworld, she can take what she's learned from her mother and make it her own. And in doing so, begins to transform the terrain of the underworld. Wanting to honor that's something that she's learned from her mother. That's from her mother.
Yeah, that's maybe part of her lineage coming through, and the learning and the gifts that have come through, really from the fourth house into the fifth, some of the gifts that are there, so that we're not it's not about rejecting everything in that house, but it is, about making it your own. And I also got the sense of how she enjoys the attention down there, although that she doesn't get the attention of Hades, which is its own sort of, its own subplot within this story of the seen, not seen happening there. But she does enjoy that she feels a role here, she feels a place here, and she feels like she could have something to do here. And she is making it more beautiful down here. And I'm thinking about that's happening as the upper world is dying, at least in this part of the journey of the story. It's happening as the underworld is dying. The upper world is dying, and the underworld is being made rich in a way. Yeah. And finding ways of expression. And an interesting sort of component comes up for me of, it's a very personal story actually, but I feel to bring it in. I had a friend who died when I was like in my mid-20s, and I was in a very open place as far as ritual and ceremony. And so I went into ritual and I went into the inner world, and I found her wandering, and I saw the tunnel that leads to the next life or the underworld, or in my sense, it was like a tunnel leading to the light. And it was dusty and old, and we just decorated together. We put up lanterns and flowers and made it beautiful so that when she walks the path, she could walk it in beauty. And so I feel, I never thought I'd tell that story on the podcast, but because it's such a deeply personal story, but that felt like such a deep offering to my friend, in a sense. Firstly, we went around and visited everybody together, all of her old friends and the people that she knew. And then went to decorate the tunnel. And so I'm sort of drawn back into that place and thankful to Persephone for decorating for us, so that we're not getting down to this kind of like man cave, Hades' man cave, that's just kind of like pretty barren, pretty sparsely decorated. Bachelor pad.
Yeah. I kind of imagine it's like really, the intricate carvings and everything, but like I find it's often like if I go on retreat, you go to a retreat space and it's so evident when it's run by a man, like just a man, and then you're like, you really need a woman to come and
woman's touch.
Yeah,
she definitely brings a woman's touch to the underworld, Persephone. Yeah.
But thank you so much for making that offering to your friend by, in the intimate part of the conversation we're having, that I get to see that. Like I really saw that, the tunnel, and being like, okay, you're going to walk the tunnel, but let's make it a tunnel worth walking.
Yeah.
As well as the offering to your listeners that you plant that in all of them, and that love and that devotion, as well as the trust in what happens if we lean into ritual, like in such agonizing times or terrifying times, to be able to lean into ritual, and then that to be what comes forth, that intuitive ability to go and do that with her. So
we were in London together, and she had just one arm because she'd had leukemia earlier and lost an arm, and then had been in recovery, and she was traveling solo, which was pretty wild. And then she got really sick again, and so I took her in a black cab to the airport. It was also like archetypal, the whole thing. Sitting in the back and just holding her because she's so weak. Her body was so weak, really starting to give way. And I'd written her a letter, and I took her as far as I could possibly take her, and then handed her the letter and gave her a hug and watched her walk away. And she went back to Perth, where we're from, and to die, basically. And months later, I met her mum, and she gave me a glass that she had made for all of her close friends, and in it was the letter. And she said she held this to the end. She read this every day. Yeah. So those things that you feel drawn, you'd feel drawn to do, to experiment with, we don't have rules. We used to have rules. We don't have rules. So, but the beauty of not having rules is to experiment, and to, and that's what I was at a place in my life where I was experimenting, and it connected to her story in the middle of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, Persephone also doesn't know, right? She's experimenting in the underworld of
I guess I'm just here now.
And I could pick those stones and decorate with them. I could pick some of these flowers and make offerings with them. What could we do with all these coins? Like, what are you saving up for, Caron? Let's decorate. And what you say of, of course, this is a myth, but your story of we have to become our own kings and queens of the underworld. We have to reconcile ourselves with death and with that transition. And that young man, Chris, who was able to do that in a world which doesn't instruct us how to do so, doesn't even necessarily inspire us how to do so, or even to be able to acknowledge the necessity of this within grief. I'm in awe of that young man that
I mean,
knew
I don't
to
know
do
how he
it.
knew how to do what he knew how to do, you know. But I was in a place of remembering at the time that and open to experimentation. I think that was the main thing. Open to into just finding out, and then we find that we can do these things after all. And it was very real for me. I was actually in Guatemala at the time when I found out that she died, and I just took the rest of the day to journey. I just went into my inner space and journeyed, and I found her, and we wandered around, and we decorated, and I felt her go, and it felt very complete. Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for invoking the imaginal realm and its connection to the spirit realm and its connection to the dream realm and its connection to the underworld. You know, like for me, all of these places are layered upon layered of like, yeah, somewhere that we can. And I think it's where a part of me goes to when I'm telling a story as well, like that deep field of the imaginal, which connects to everything, like it's connected to the spirit realm. I mean, I don't know these things, but my sense of like, yeah, it's a place that you can slip into that kind of vertical plane where you can reach out and receive in other directions.
Yeah, and it's true because it's true. It's true because you experience it at a deep level, and that's enough. And it is a mapping of these deep interior realms, and that's what myth. One of the elements of myth, right, is to speak to those multi-layered imaginal realms and to become familiar with them. And that's why I love your storytelling, Libby, because you don't spare us on details, and you have us in there wandering around. You transport. You use that mercurial side of you to take us there. But now we're heading up into the fields, and it's now a barren underworld looking up a world.
Yeah,
I imagine.
Yeah, and since she's been taken, Persephone has felt fear. She's felt terror. She's felt abandonment. She's felt curiosity. She's felt longing. She's felt desire. But never once has she felt grief. Even down in the underworld, never once did she feel grief. But when she goes back to the upper world and she sees, Persephone has never seen a world where everything is not radiantly alive, where the fields aren't ready to be plowed, where the crops aren't ready to be harvested, where the orchards aren't ready to be gathered. So she's an unrecognizable world for her, this barren land, and she is shook with the grief of the death which is upon everything up here in the world of the living. And she also feels a shame creep into her that she was down there all that time, playing with Cerberus and gathering flowers. For what? When up here, the land was dying and the people are starving. But Hermes takes her back to her mother. And of course, when Demeter sees Persephone, poof, poof, is she relieved. And the jubilation that Demeter feels as she holds her darling girl back in her arms once again, that joy immediately, like the beginning of Aries season, everything sparks back into life once again, and the seed pods crack and the shoots begin reaching up as the roots began creeping back down, and the land begins to glisten once again with the richness of Demeter's nutrition, Demeter's fertilizing joy, and the trees shake off their dead leaves and they begin to bud once again, and all the life creeps back into the world. And Demeter says, a feast tonight to celebrate my daughter's return, a feast of such that Olympus has never seen the like, and everyone is invited to this feast. I want all of the gods and the goddesses and all of the naiads and the dryads and all of the muses, and all of the titans are even welcome. We will have such a feast. And as the guests come one by one, everyone is delighted to see Persephone back. They go up to her and they say, welcome home. Welcome home. We've missed you. We've missed you, Persephone. And they all want her to tell them, what was it like down in the underworld? Oh God, is Hades such a ball breaker as everyone says he is? Like, did you have a nice time with Hades? And Persephone says, I didn't really spend much time with Hades. He was very busy, but I really loved the fields of asphodel. And oh my God, you should see Cerberus. He's so cute. He's adorable. And Persephone loves telling her stories of her time down in the underworld, and the gods and the titans and the nymphs and the muses, they all love hearing and seeing what a great time they had. They're all fascinated. None of the immortals have, apart from Hermes, have ever been down to the underworld. So it's a mystery to them, and Persephone can begin to paint this mystery for them, and they love hearing her stories. And Persephone, kind of without being aware of what she's doing, she comes and sits in her mother's seat at the table, and it's suddenly Persephone that's hosting this banquet, and everyone's enraptured, and no one is talking over her head anymore, but everyone's looking Persephone right in the eye and loving her storytelling, loving all that she has to share. And at some point, Persephone goes to get the Dionysian jug of wine and pour herself another big glass. And Hermes sidles up to her and says, oh, Persephone, did you miss Mummy's food down there? Did you miss Mummy's food? And Persephone looks at Hades witheringly and says, Hermes, that single pomegranate was more delicious than anything I've ever eaten up here in the upper world. And Hermes says, ooh, okay, fine. And Persephone says, go and chase after Apollo's cattle. Like, you're not welcome here. Finally putting Hermes in his place. But what Persephone doesn't realize is that Demeter was in earshot when she says this. And when Demeter hears that Persephone ate a pomegranate, a piece of Demeter dies all over again. Because Demeter knows that you cannot eat the food of the underworld and hope to stay in the upper world. But Demeter comes over to Persephone and smiles, and she says, you look well, my child. But come, you must be starving, metaphorically speaking. I don't imagine that the food of the underworld was very tasty. Come, I've made your favorites. I've made all your favorites, Persephone. Come and eat. And Demeter fusses over Persephone so that Demeter doesn't have to quite recognize the grief which settles into her. And time moves on. And Demeter has her banquets night after night, and Persephone loves to hold court. And one evening, Persephone even brings her lyre out and does a duet with Apollo, who is delighted to share the stage with Persephone. But even as Persephone plays and shares her poetry with the other gods and goddesses, with time, she begins to look tired. And she looks wan and pale. And though the beauty of her poetry doesn't diminish, there's something in Persephone's appearance which does diminish. And as this part of Persephone is withering up in the world of the living, the grief that sunk down into Demeter is beginning to swell and to grow once again. And with that grief, there comes a heavy weight of acceptance, the heavy weight of acceptance which awaits all mothers, the acceptance that they must allow their child to step into their own house, into their own life, And time passes on, and Persephone fades until finally Demeter is ready. Demeter is ready, and she says, "My love, I think it's time. I think it's time." And Persephone says, "I know. I know." And Demeter leads Persephone all the way to the crack in the earth where a younger Persephone once loved to go and disappear. And Persephone is confused as to how her mother knows exactly where this spot is, but she certainly knows it. And she's certainly known when they arrive there. And when Demeter and Persephone arrive at the cave of Elefsina, there are many humans dressed in black cloaks who have gathered around the opening to the cave and who kneel and bow when they see Demeter approaching. And all of the gods and goddesses also come and join this congregation. And they all say to Persephone, "We'll miss you. We'll miss you. And we'll await your return." And they all watch as Persephone hugs her mother tightly and says, "I love you, mother." And Persephone turns and she retreats into the crack in the earth with her head held high as the Olympians look on as she descends. And Persephone descends all the way down to the underworld, where there waiting on his throne is Hades. And Hades looks up as she enters, and the edges of his great beard spread as beneath his beard he smiles. And next to Hades is another great throne. And he stands and he reaches for Persephone, and she walks to him and places her hand in his as he reaches his vast fingers around her delicate knuckles, and he leads her to the chair and he says, "Your throne, my queen." Persephone takes up her place as queen of the underworld, the place which her soul, born of those entwining snakes, where her soul was always meant to be. And together they rule. Together they rule with ritual and devotion to death. And they guardian the souls who come to reside there in their kingdom of the underworld. Side by side, king and queen, lovers, Hades and Persephone, where she is finally seen and celebrated. And where she stays for 6 months of the year. She descends every year on the equinox, and the world above is plunged once more into grief, Demeter's grief, which never ceases to diminish season after season. And the world of the living is bereft once again of food and fruit and merriment until it's time. It's time for Persephone to ascend and come back out with that spark of Aries season at every spring equinox. And Persephone's return and Demeter's joy once again floods the world with life and vitality. And Persephone loves to come and tell everyone just how delicious her time down in the underworld was. As the days stretch longer and longer and longer until they begin to shorten once again in that last expanse of summer until the next equinox, when she descends and returns to the place where she truly belongs, by the side of Hades. Deep in the earth, deep in the chasms of body, where pleasure awaits us all.
Thank you, Libby. Beautifully done. Thank you for taking us there and bringing us back.
And yeah, I want to, we talked briefly before that, it's love that brings Persephone down year after year. And it's love that brings her back up year after year. And that if we want to know how to navigate not only the seasons of the world, but the seasons of soul, the necessary seasons of soul where we descend and we ascend. And to blanket that descent in love is not to say that it cannot be agonizing and terrifying and confronting, but that if we still trust that we can encase it with love, then yeah, this is how we can descend and ascend skillfully until it's time to feel that supportive, holding love of Demeter, which is always waiting for us back on the other side of the descent. She's always got her arms open, ready to welcome us back and to, remind us that life can flood into everything once again, that her love will flood life into everything once again. So yeah, for me, the Underworld is, and Persephone's story is one of love.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very moved by your telling of it. And I feel like it's touched a deeper place of the fifth that we would not have been able to get to without this story, or close to. And so deeply thankful, and also from the listeners, deeply thankful for the journey that you've taken us on. It feels like a real special edition on the Soul's Terms episode where people can go on a full journey with you, with us. And so as I feel us sort of coming towards the conclusion here, I'm wondering about something that I've put in my newsletter recently that you had told me about, and I'm excited for, about instructions for the Underworld, because this feels very relevant to where we are, to this story and to love.
Yeah. Well, firstly, thank you for letting me, giving me such a vast meadow to go and find that Narcissus in, and allowing me to really roll around in the meadow.
Yeah.
For as long as the story invited me to. It's very generous of you. I'm very generous to anyone who's continuing to listen at this point. But yeah, it's hard to tell the stories I find it hard to tell the stories with trying to, put them into a garden. They need to be able to be out in the wilderness. Yeah. But yeah, when we were on pilgrimage recently in Greece, you and I, you took us to Delphi. You took us to Delphi, and we'd been kind of preparing what our questions would be for the Pythia, the priestess of Delphi, who speaks with her forked tongue and spits truth. And at the feet of the Pythia, so at the bottom of the footsteps of Delphi, I just had this idea come into my mind, which was instructions for the Underworld, and it came with the name, that would be an initiation into Underworld, into body, into dream, and that it would begin on the equinox, and that I would tell Persephone's story and invite beings who, are called to the descent, but the descent is happening whether we're called to it or not. So who are able to, who are willing to come and honor that descent and to co-create the Underworld from that experience. So it's a 6-month immersion from the autumn equinox to the spring equinox, which will be, it's essentially a immersion in remembering how to dream. And, that's, I have a dream school. It's called Embodied Dream Weaving. And yeah, my Dharma is teaching people to remember how to dream. So it will be an immersion in that, but through that, it will be deep embodiment. And like I kind of mentioned in the story, for me, the Underworld is in body. And when we slip into the somatic unconscious, it opens up this huge field where we can access so much. And so it would be, you know, like we'll find different ways down, different ways in. And then with a combination of kind of storytelling and dream circles and creative practices, embodiment practices, the group will co-create the underworld. So just as Persephone, you know, begins to expand Hades' instructions for the underworld, so too will the group, you know, co-create together. What are the instructions for the underworld? How do we let ourselves be drawn down by love and longing? But then what happens when we're down there, and how do we support one another in community? How do we allow the richness of that time of year, autumn and winter, at least in the Northern Hemisphere? How do we kind of imbue that with our devotion? And in doing so, tend to the wilderness of our souls, so that we're dreaming what it is, and what it is that's ready to be recovered in the underworld and brought back up on the other side to the upper world, to the land of the living.
Yeah.
So I'm doing a free workshop, which will be honoring Demeter and asking for her support, and it will be on guardianship and ritual. That's on the 22nd of August, as both the sun and the new moon enter Virgo. And then the immersion will begin just after the equinox. So yeah, if people are interested, then my website is embodieddreamweaving.com, or you can find me on Instagram, embodied.dream.weaving on Instagram, where I'm endlessly banging on about this. So yeah.
Beautiful. Well, that's just next week, guys. So let's get on board and get in there and support Libby's work, because as you can hear, she has a very strong calling to story, to dream, to embodiment, to myth, to all the things that On the Soul's Terms has always been about from the very first moment of the very first episode. It's always been the lifeblood of this podcast. And now on our 101st episode, we get to explore with this incredible storyteller, Libby Rose Waite, and everything that she took us through, and how generous you've been to take us there. So thank you, Libby. I strongly implore everybody out there that is interested in this kind of work to get in touch with Libby and go for it, because the riches are like all those gold coins that are stacked up now at the entrance to the underworld. And, it's those gold coins down there that we really retrieve. It's the wealth of the soul that we retrieve by going into that place long before we go to that place. We're all destined to go there in the end. Going before you die is an incredibly enriching an incredibly enriching way to develop soul, develop a stronger dreaming mind, to understand the world not just on the logical and linear levels, but to get it here on the woven thread level, on the tapestry level. So yes.
And thank you for all the threads that you've handed me to weave with, not just this episode, but and the lifetimes that we've shared, but the time together that we've shared. Chris has given me so many threads, and it's such, as I'm sure he does to everyone who listens to this podcast, you hand those threads so generously so that everyone may weave with them. And I'm so grateful for all the threads you've handed me.
Well, as we say in the fifth, it's a pleasure. And I look forward to next time you're on the show, Libby, which I'm sure you'll become a friend of the podcast now, and we'd love to welcome you back when that time is ripe.
Thank you. I look forward to it as well.
Thank you for listening to On the Soul's Terms podcast. To support the show, please consider leaving a 5-star review, sharing with friends, or becoming a patron at patreon.com/onthesoulsterms. Until next time.